Okay, let's kick this thing off. So we're talking here with Dasha Beardsley, who I have never met before personally, but I'm familiar with y'all's company, with Lone Star Capital. And for the audience, real quickly, Dasha, could you give the audience a little bit of background on who you are, where you live, what do you guys do?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. So like you mentioned, my name is Dasha Beardsley, and I'm the Director of Investor Relations for Lone Star Capital. I graduated a few years ago from the University of Southern California with a degree in real estate development, and I've
Hmm.
been working for the firm while in college as well. So I've been doing this for a few years now.
Hmm.
And aside from the investor relations role that I have at Lone Star, I also oversee our marketing. Although contrary to our name, Lone Star Capital, we are not headquartered in Texas. We're in New York City. So that is where I am at currently, and that's where I live now. So we just invest solely in Texas multifamily. And that's
Gotcha.
why we have our name.
Gotcha. And if I recall from our email conversations, you guys are in the One World Center, or One World, the World
One World
Tower
Trade Center.
Trade Center. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
very
it's right
cool.
there
So
actually for anyone
yeah,
who's watching.
yeah. On the video and behind her, she has One World Trade Center building, and then Lone Star Capital kind of overlaid. It's very cool. It's a cool shot of New York City. And how long has Lone Star Capital been around? When we all found it?
About 6 years ago in
Uh-huh.
2018.
Gotcha. And what is do you know the reason why Texas was selected as your primary market for your multifamily investments?
Yeah, so there's a few factors that make Texas attractive, such as the growth of the market, job growth, landlord friendly, and it's large. There's a lot of different markets within Texas that would be viable to invest in.
Mm.
But I think a lot of people, when they hear that we're only in Texas, that kind of gives them the impression that we don't really think there's anywhere else to invest that's good. Like we're just think Texas is by far the best place to invest in. While we do love being in Texas and we're very bullish on that market, I do the main point of that is to be very focused, and we're
Right.
able to create additional value for ourselves and our investors by being focused in one market. So, of course, there are many reasons to love Texas, but we also love it because we're there and we've kind of created our bed there.
Hmm. Well, and if I understand correctly, you also have your own property management company that I assume it has boots on the ground there. And so that there's some synergies to having a focus market where you have your people, you're not spread out all over the country.
Yep, absolutely. So we do have our in-house property management that is headquartered in Houston. And
Mm.
so we're able to we're also in San Antonio and Dallas and Houston. So we're still able to kind of have them manage those other markets as well. It's not too far. But yes, if we were all over the country, it would be really difficult for us at the scale that we're at to
Hmm.
be able to have in-house property management.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, in your role is investor relations, and I think you do some social media as well. So, I'm curious, or maybe we should just define for the audience real quickly when we're talking about doing syndications and raising capital for these big multifamily projects. When you say air quote investor relations, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that there are definitely a multitude of things that go into investor relations, and I think different companies have different roles allocated to their investor relations. Obviously,
Hmm.
there's going to be overlap wherever you go, but at least with my role, there are kind of three things that go into it. So
Hmm.
one, of course, is communicating with investors, answering their questions on an ongoing basis.
Hmm.
There's also the administrative side of actually helping investors get their documents signed, onboarding our capital partners. So um, that we call that more investor services.
Yeah.
So helping them with their portal and things like that. Like where's my distribution? If they put
Yeah.
in some distribution, whatever. And then there's also working towards growing the firm and our investor base. So that would be new initiatives like, we have in-person events or this also ties into my marketing side with a new marketing campaign to find more investors. So
Sure.
those are really the three things that I focus on with investors, with regards to investors in my role.
Yeah, and I do a fair amount of that in my business. It's probably not anywhere near the scale that what you're doing because it's like a fractional role, not a full-time role because I don't have as many projects I'm working on at the same time. But it's a lot of work. It's
Hmm.
just a ton of details, right? It's not like it's even that hard of work. It's just it's like you got to make sure that you're communicating effectively to investors who have already invested, and then you're actively out there raising more capital. And when you have a new project that you're doing a syndication for, suddenly it's like a urgent press to get all the
Hmm.
communications done, right? And so I noticed that you mentioned here on your one sheet that you have uh, some capital raising processes, and I'm curious if I can just kind of give you that little idea there. You can kind of dive into that direction, whichever way you makes the most sense. Because I'm not really sure I have a question other than what do you mean by capital raising processes?
Yeah. So this is actually something that's has been an iterative process for us, and we're actually kind of rethinking and adjusting it
Okay.
as we speak. But the general process is pretty similar. So we set out a timeline for when we once we sign the PSA for a deal. So we're under contract, and it's now officially time to start raising capital. We set a timeline for each of the steps for raising that capital. So, for example, we do an email blast to all of our investors, and so that's a
Hmm.
mass. We call that launching. So
Hmm.
we launch, then the next step is the webinar. But before then, we want to send a reminder email. We also do we utilize sales message, which we're able to send out mass text as a reminder for our webinar as well.
Hmm.
And then we host the webinar, we send the replay. Then after that, we also do phone call follow-ups with
Right.
people who attended the webinar. And then we also, after that, we send, funding deadline reminder. So there's all these sequential steps that we take in order to make sure that we're really hitting all the stops and able
Mm.
to basically raise all the capital that's necessary for the deal.
Right. And I've done some degree of this, and there's just a lot of hand holding that goes on with it's like, okay, now really, really, like go ahead and send that wire in, like really, really, like you say you're interested, whatever questions do you have? And so maybe some insight that would be interesting for people listening to this is whether you're just starting or you're at the scale of Lone Star Capital or like the really big hedge funds, like this is the nature of the beast. And when you're like, this is a raising capital business.
Mhm.
Yes, you have to go find the deals, but then you have to find the capital to match it. And I tell people in the consulting that I do that like you're always in the capital raising business, like that never stops.
Mhm.
Do y'all agree with that notion, I guess? And if so, kind of what are y'all doing to always stay ahead of the demand curve of fulfilling the capital needs for your projects?
Yeah, I would say that, like you said, you're in constant capital raising mode, even if you don't have a deal.
Yeah.
The last thing that you want to do is wait until you have a deal. You haven't spoken to any of your investors in over a year. Like, let's just say transaction volume has been down and a lot of people have been on the sidelines the past year.
Mhm.
The last thing that you want to do is then just assume that there's all of your investors are still warm, still wanting to invest with you. I'm sure a lot of them will, but you want to maintain contact and be top of mind. So that's also something, like you mentioned, it's a ton of work. And just to kind of do the bare minimum of servicing to your investors. So
Mhm.
that's, answering emails whenever they ask you a question or calling them back or things like that. But we want to go above and beyond and actually now we're sending out lots of gifts. Whenever someone refers us an investor, we want to show our
Mhm.
appreciation, sending handwritten notes. And so beforehand, we weren't really able to what like being understaffed in that regard.
Mhm.
It's hard to be able to really show your appreciation for your investors and also be top of mind because you're just focused on, of course, the meat and potatoes, the important stuff, which is obviously doing the monthly communications and financials and all that stuff. That's super necessary, but we're also now finding the importance of kind of going above and beyond
Mhm.
and adding the very nice fluff to our investor relations.
That's that personal touch, right? Because I
Hmm.
mean, people are all fundamentally investing in the deal, but they're investing in the sponsor team, right? Like that's really who they're betting on is the sponsor team is going to perform. And when you suddenly shut down and don't give them any news, people's minds start to think like, what's going on over there with Lone Star? Like
Mhm.
maybe they don't have their ducks in a row anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's where people go, right? That's I've found that too. Like you almost can't over communicate. I don't think I've ever had anybody tell me you're communicating too much. Stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe once or twice someone said like that's just a lot of emails. I was like, would you rather it just be crickets over here?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's definitely better to stray in that direction.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys do a newsletter and a podcast, and you have a social media presence, I'm sure. Talk to me a little bit about what are you guys doing on the social media front, and then the other, kind of avenues of communicating that you have to find new investors.
Yeah. So as far as social media, Rob has started his social media journey quite a long time ago, posting videos to YouTube, LinkedIn. And so we've really systematized it since and created really a schedule and a system for his posting. So for Rob's social media, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I think I got all of them. So we're really everywhere, but I think it was really important in the beginning stages to be able to really master a few platforms, which we are those platforms that he focused on in the beginning are still actually the ones that we've seen the most results from,
Mm,
which was LinkedIn and YouTube. So as far as that, we're posting 5 days a week. We're posting different content, on TikTok than we are on LinkedIn. And so we really created a system, and having someone focused on that as well is really helpful. And then a little over a year ago, Craig joined our team as the director of business development. And so
hmm
now we're also doing social media for him as well. So he's on the podcast with Rob. We're posting clips and things like that. And um, I don't want to say we're surprised, but we're pleasantly surprised at how many people will tell us that they've been listening to the podcast. That was one of the main kind of pushing factors for them to actually investing with us. So yeah, we've seen a lot of benefits, and a lot of the times I think it doesn't come out until later that they were like, yeah, I've been watching you for years, and then now finally they're investing. So it's really
Yeah.
planting seeds that we've seen with social media, and then sometimes it's really meeting in person that brings people over into actually investing with us. So people will get to know us, start to feel a little bit more comfortable via social media, and then seeing us in person or, finally seeing a deal that really resonates with them, then that pushes
hmm
them over.
hmm And so Rob is the primary face of Lone Star Capital. Is that a fair assessment
Yeah.
there? And so I've seen Rob at a couple of events where he's spoken, and it's funny. You think about the YouTube personalities and like the TikTok personalities and whatnot. That people on social media, they're
Hmm.
they're usually a very dynamic, super energetic type personality. What you think about. But that's not how I would characterize Rob at all. He's very matter of fact and he's always in a suit and he's very business minded. I think that's can be he is who he is. Like he's not trying to be somebody he's not, and he's going to. My sense of it is that he's going to connect with people based on that. This guy has the pedigree, he has the background, he's done his homework. Is that I know it's not probably a fair question, but you're not the one doing the presentations, but you kind of see behind the scenes in the way that we don't. Is that something y'all talk about, like the his camera presence or like his personality on these platforms?
Yeah, I guess we haven't really ever discussed changing it or adjusting the way that he comes off. That's just kind
Mhm.
of the way that
He
he is
is, yeah,
in general, and that's just natural to him. And I guess I haven't really thought about it in that way because I'm used to it. I'm,
yeah,
Rob's sister, so I've known him my whole life, and he's
yeah.
I don't want to say he's always been serious, but he is pretty matter of fact, doesn't really not super loud or
No,
super energetic. So I do think though that in a more technical sense, the way the content that he is delivering is generally a bit more technical and high level
Yeah,
than what you often see on social media
I agree.
or at conferences. It's not necessarily motivational, it's more educational and, like you said, matter of fact. And
Hmm.
so I think that there's definitely a time and place for both, but we have really been able to target more of our target investor and capital partner by his style being the way that it is. We're really, we like to work with sophisticated investors. We end up working with a lot of people who are already in the industry that already know real estate. So it's working in that regard. And I think that that really pays off, like working with people who want to be educated about real
Mm.
estate. It really helps um just when things don't necessarily go exactly as planned, when people really understand and are educated in what they're investing in.
Hmm. And when you're dealing with people's money, having that level of coming across as sophisticated and not goofy, I think
Hmm.
is valuable. I think that works towards you. It just seems like it would be sometimes a hard thing to find uh, a clip that would go viral, or like I think I have that same problem when I'm doing my content. Is it's educational and it's kind of like here's the facts, but like how do people find that? But I guess if you're interested in those topics, you're more interested in having people who actually are interested in investing in deals versus just being entertained by
Right.
some silly viral video, right? Yeah,
Right. And so it depends on the platform as well. Like TikTok, for example, is probably not the best place to find investors,
right.
but we're already putting in the effort to make YouTube Shorts, which YouTube in general has been pretty productive for us.
Yeah.
Um, so we're like might as well put it on TikTok, but yeah, it's probably not going to be the best place to find a, a serious investor.
Yeah.